This week on Two Middle-Aged Guys Trying to Work It All Out, we make you an offer you can't refuse.
Two middle-aged guys try to work it all out. Two middle-aged guys try to work it all out. Two middle-aged guys try to work it all out.
Okay, welcome to Two Middle-Aged Guys Trying to Work It All Out. Dave, how are you this week?
Yeah, I'm doing real good, Chris.
Oh, really? Because you sound a little bit like Torgo there.
Oh no, been listening to some feedback, listening to the podcast, listening to our audience, and my voice is whiny and high pitched, so I'm trying out something new.
Okay, all right. So now I'm
It
starting.
really hurts. It's a little bit of Trace Atkins and a little bit of Christian Bale's Batman, and maybe just a smidge of Nick Nolte.
I'm hearing a little Sling Blade. Maybe
Yep.
a little.
Yep, that too. It hurts. I'm gonna stop. I'm sorry.
Oh, okay.
I want to apologize to our listeners. I've been messing with workshopping some different
Sure.
voices. I paid a consultant. It came out of the two guys fund.
Oh, of course.
Yeah, we're broke.
I was going to ask you about that discrepancy.
The creditors will be calling you soon, and I know you'll take care of it.
Yeah, absolutely.
No, I guess I'll just stick with the whiny, high-pitched, fast-talking Dave you guys know and love, or whatever.
You know, I think that's a good move. If you want to try maybe like a Christopher Lambert next time.
So you can't understand me, and I'm non-distinct but European?
Yes. All right. Well, Dave, something interesting happened this week. I wonder if you saw it, but the Oppenheimer trailer dropped.
I have not watched that.
Oh.
I watched the teaser, the early teaser, and of course, listen, I'm in. It's Christopher Nolan.
Sure.
It's Cillian Murphy. I said his name right?
I believe that's how you say
think
it.
I'm not sure, right? It's kind of like celiac disease, but a name. So I'm in, right? It's Robert Downey Jr. as I can't remember what science guy he plays. It's not Bill Nye. It's not the science guy. It's just another famous old timey science guy. I'm in though, right? But I do need to watch it. I've heard it's outstanding. It's one of those things I want to watch on the big TV with the sound system cranked up. But it almost doesn't matter. Christopher Nolan about Oppenheimer using practical effects to recreate the atomic bomb. How can I not be in?
You know, I'm with you. I'm totally in as well. But I'll tell you, the trailer just made me anxious for it even more. So it looks outstanding.
All right, I will watch that.
Yeah, well, whenever you get a second.
I will. I'll watch it and I'll report back.
Good. And while you're reporting back, I understand you have a story for me.
Oh goodness, yes. So I think the story has two things. I think we're giving the folks a little bit of an insight, but pulling back the curtain on the mechanics of the show and also on our friendship. Right, we're trying this show and we're trying to work it out. Right, not only are we trying to work out these big giant questions we put in front of us, we're also just trying to work out the show. So this situation presented an interesting challenge because I had the story I wanted to tell you. I can't tell Chris this. If I tell him beforehand and I repeat it on the podcast, then it's manufactured. It's not natural.
Right.
If I hold back on it, then maybe I've made too big of a deal of it by saving it for the podcast. So.
Well, I think it just goes to show that when you start a podcast, you are no longer a human being in and of yourself.
You're a content generator.
Exactly. You live for the show.
Your whole life now is content. There's lots of questions, and this is Brian, moral quandaries, really, that make me question the core of who I am. And is everything I encounter now podcast content? And the answer is potentially. So I'm going to tell you this story, and I think it has 2 points. First of all, it's going to give you a little bit of insight into what's important to me and how my brain works. And then the other is that should we hold things like this for the podcast? And did I make too big of a deal of it? All those things, well, we can resolve. It's really up to the listener to decide. You may decide as well and mock me, and that's fine too. Last week, I think it was last Thursday, Friday, it doesn't really matter what day, about the noon hour, I was preparing for my midday rest. A spot of tea, cucumber sandwiches, a light 3 or 4 hour nap, all the normal stuff that the work from home professional does.
Of course.
About noon, taking a quick break. My phone rings. I look at the phone, and listen, anytime I get a phone call, 9 times out of 10, it's spam or spam adjacent. So I look at it, and I look at the number, I look what it says, and I look at it again. I put it down. I do this 3 times in the course of like a second. And I realize, first of all, totally unexpected. Second of all, I need to make a call. Do I answer this or not? And I got to make it fast. And folks, Chris, you're going to know when I tell you this. Obviously, I was going to answer it, but I had to. There's a certain urgency that came upon me. Answer it before it goes to voicemail. I look at my phone, and it says, call from Riff Tracks LLC, California. And I'm just like, my heart's beating fast. And the things that run through my mind are, number one, is this a prank? And I think the people who would know that this would be something to be good to prank me on, I should stop and say, folks, Riff Tracks is a huge deal to me. It's the Mystery Science Theater guys doing their new thing, which is, do a video service on the internet, making fun of B movies as well as some modern movies. It's great. Mike Nelson is the lead there for that creatively. And it's, Mystery Science Theater 2.0. Massive fan. I buy pretty much everything they put out. Love their stuff. So a call from these guys. Imagine, Chris, if you looked at your phone and it said Stephen King LLC.
Sure,
That's
exactly.
kind of the same thing. So is it a prank is the first thing. And I thought only a handful of people would know this would be something to be funny to prank me on and would have the wherewithal to do it. My wife, my brother, you, and another friend of mine. I immediately think, okay, prank is unlikely because most folks are too nice to do that to me because they would know if I prank, my heart would be broken. So it's probably not a prank. So I answered it, hello, and the gentleman introduces himself, says, my name is so-and-so, I won't say the name. I'm the CEO of Riff Tracks. So all of a sudden I am like, right. What is going on here? And immediately I realized like 5 minutes before, I had just bought a video on the website. I thought, maybe my credit card didn't go through?
And the CEO's
calling me. And I'll come back to that in a minute. The CEO said, hey, listen, Dave, you had shipped some books to Mike Nelson to have them autographed a few months back. And I was like, yeah, I did. My first edition copies of 2 of his books that I bought when they first came out, I sent it to him and they were going to get them autographed. He said, we misplaced them and we locked them up in the vault. I think that's the word he used, where we keep movies thinking they were movies that Mike was going to watch when he came back in the office. And then we realized, we went back in there, that those were books from you. So he said, I apologize. We're going to ship them over. We're not going to wait for him to get to California. We're going to ship them to him in Minnesota. He'll sign them and get them right back to you. We just wanted to apologize and let you know we hadn't lost them. We hadn't kept them. We're going to get those back to you and just, apologize. I'm like, sir, first of all, you don't need to apologize. I wasn't worried, right? I was more concerned that UPS lost them than Riff Tracks lost them. And I thanked him for taking the time, to call me. And then I made a little joke about, I thought maybe I just bought a Riff Tracks and I thought maybe the credit card was declined. He laughed. I was like, oh, I made the CEO of Riff Tracks laugh. That must mean that I'm funny. And we talked for a few moments, and it was an incredible, bizarre experience. And the bottom line, he goes, you're a fan, we care, and we invited you to send these books to him, and I paid for return shipping and all that stuff. I put the new label in, and we just wanted to make sure that you knew that we were going to get them back to you. And I was like, wow, that's what a commitment to your fans to take the time to do that, and then the expense to send them back to Mike, and he was really great. And then we hung up, and I thought, that is such a cool story. And what was so cool is that I thought maybe they were calling me because my credit card was declined. It wasn't declined.
Sure. Yeah.
It was a neat story. And I thought, wow, I got to tell Chris this. And then I realized, well, if I tell him,
you got to use it for the podcast.
I got to use it for the podcast.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because my life is now content. Life is now art.
Exactly. I know exactly what you're talking about. And I was just expecting that story to end with, 4 episodes out, Mike had discovered the podcast.
He hired me. I get Mike coffee now. That's where he thinks my talent. I agree. No. No, I was like, what is going,
All right, well, that's an outstanding story.
It is so cool.
And I'm glad you saved it for the podcast.
Yes.
I'm also glad that you answered the call as opposed to just mulling it over in your head many times.
I could have went too long on that. You had to make that decision fast. It was the shock of, like Stephen King comes up on you, right? And that's really, I say the equivalent, the Riff Tracks guys are not nearly as famous as Stephen King, but in terms of personal importance.
Absolutely. Or, Bono shows up on my phone.
Okay.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, I get it.
Bono and the Pope have you on a 3-way, Chris. They would like to see about you coming to Africa and curing mosquito disease with them. That's what they call it. Yeah. Fine. We just spread
go
some
when
nets.
You're called, right?
Bono's working on a giant net to put over Africa. It's his heart's in the right place. It's not going to work. Everybody knows that. They're too afraid to tell him.
So they hire me to break it to him.
Right.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, we spent $1 billion on nets.
Just one?
It's not going to work. It's one giant net. He insisted. He also wants sunglasses in the entire country.
Because small nets would have actually helped, but just one giant. Okay.
No, not big enough for Bono. One gigantic continent-sized net.
All right. Well, with that, Dave, I have a game for you.
All right, I am excited.
Now, I'm going to jump ahead a little bit. The topic of today's episode, if you listened to the intro or if you read what you downloaded, it's mob movies. That's what we're going to talk about today. So I thought, how do we get in a mindset to talk about an important genre of film?
Well, we'd probably murder someone, is what I was thinking we'd start with. Oh.
No. I'm taking you, Dave, inside the actor studio with James Lipton.
James Lipton.
You're going to answer the 10 questions.
All right.
Dave, what is your favorite word?
Lipton.
What is your least favorite word?
James.
What turns you on?
That's a weird question.
He asks it to every actor.
Not that question, James, and that's immediately... I've been calling you James. Is that all right?
That's fine. No, that's how I presented this game. What turns you off?
Mob movies. No, I'm joking. Old bald men.
Fair enough. What sound or noise do you love?
Thunderstorms.
What sound or noise do you hate?
Bowling alleys.
All right. Now for this one, we are a clean podcast, so you can just spell or reference or whatever. But what is your favorite curse word?
Oh my goodness. I say I don't have one. I truly do not have one. I don't know, something in the orbit of darn it.
All right. What profession other than your own would you like to attempt?
Reality show star. No, I would like to attempt for my profession, for money. I would like to do what we are doing right now, but be paid for it, which is to be a broadcaster of some sort.
Fantastic. What profession would you not like to do?
Never wish to return to food service.
If heaven exists, what would you like to hear God say when you arrive at the pearly gates?
Well, it does exist, and I am confident, but certainly not of my own doing, but I'm confident that I will get there, and he'll say, I bet you're shocked to see us. And he'll point to all the people in heaven, like, you can make it. You come on in.
All right.
I never really. Wow, those are tough. Those are tough introspective questions.
Those are the inside the actor studio questions that James Lipton asked every single person to ever grace that stage. And now, Dave, you are among their ranks.
Wow. Well, thank you, James. Even though your name is something I don't like, and you creep me out. You're an old, creepy,
he's dead
whispery
now,
guy. Oh, he did pass away.
So be
He
kind.
did.
Yes.
He did pass away.
And speaking of passing away, that happens a lot in mob movies.
It does. It does. Natural causes are usually not a big factor. Fish sleeping with is involved.
Going to mattresses.
Going to the mattresses. I recently learned what that meant. It does not mean going to the mattress store. Although, actually, it does involve going to the mattress store. They go and buy a bunch of mattresses. Anyways, we're getting far
Sure.
ahead of us. I'm so excited for this topic. I over-prepared in the name of course, the show, but also because I love mob movies, mafia movies, crime movies. So before we jump into that, let's talk, because this is a big, gigantic topic,
Could
right?
be.
And so you got the big. You think of it, the big genre of crime movies, right? And you get a little smaller below that. Sort of the organized crime is a subgenre that then you have mob, and then even below that is mafia. If you look at mob as being, sort of the organized crime with that sort of familial aspect, and then mafia being the Italian, Sicilian aspect even still. So today, without drawing hard boundaries, right, because I don't want to box ourselves in, but where do you see us going in this discussion? Do you see us touching upon all aspects of crime movies? Do you see, what would be like in and what's out in your point of view?
Yeah, that's a fair question. I do see us going broad, touching crime movies. I will say for my preparation for this episode, I did try to be pretty strict with mob. And I'm prepared to talk about as many movies as you want to bring up. There's probably 7 on my list that I want to hit, even if it's just to mention them. And the 7 on my list are mob, not mafia. And then there's some of them that fall into mafia category. But I went broader to mob. You want to go even broader that to crime? I'm open to the discussion.
Yeah. To me, I feel like organized crime, we're going to touch upon that, but I think that the mob, mafia, Italian, Sicilian centric, those are the ones that are the most classic in terms of the films, right? So I think that we'll probably, we'll bounce around through there, but I think at the core of it, I think there's going to be 4 or 5 movies we really talk about, and those will most likely be that ethnic familial organization that is, La Cosa Nostra.
And how many
mafia.
of them are Scorsese films?
Well, it's interesting that, between Scorsese and that other gentleman with
Coppola,
yes. Yeah. I think we'll be covering quite a lot of stuff here. So now we kind of got some boundaries drawn, right? So what brought us to put this on the list? I mean, and then why is this important to us, and where did we get introduced? I think it's all kind of one big question. Where did we get introduced to these movies? Now, I got to tell you, I struggled trying to figure out the route. And I think I got it, but I was hoping maybe, you would give me where you thought this started, and that I could either affirm my thinking about the genesis of my love for mafia movies, or maybe it just blows it up, right? And I don't have a good memory of where it started. What is the movie that kind of hooked you and made you think, okay, I like movies of this genre? Yeah,
my introduction was very personal. I don't remember it involving you, actually. And so my introduction was the first Godfather film. But why I watched it was kind of a weird, unique story. I remember being at our local video rental store, and I remember at that time VHS tapes that had 2 tapes to a movie, like, had a gravitas about them.
Sure.
I mean, like, anytime I would see a double tape movie, I was like, that movie must be important.
It was like 1 in 100, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
Yeah, it didn't happen very often, and so I'm going up and down the shelves looking for something to rent to watch that night, and I see The Godfather, and it's a double cassette, and I knew enough about the term Godfather to know, okay, this is a mafia movie. I know that. But what drew me to it, and I think I was probably 11 or 12 at the time, and what drew me to it was the idea, I'm going to watch an important movie. And so I remember doing this with The Godfather. I remember doing this with JFK, seeing that and being like, oh, this must be an important movie. I remember doing that with Schindler's List. So there was kind of this like mystique about it to me. And I don't know what it was about me as a 12-year-old that made me say, I want to watch important film, but that was what it was for that particular day in that rental. And I got The Godfather and I put it in, and I remember thoroughly enjoying the opening wedding sequence and just being like, wow, this is really interesting. Now then, as a 12-year-old, after that kind of sequence, I kind of like it started getting long, it started getting boring.
Sure.
And I'm not sure, I can't say that I made it through the whole movie at that point in my life. But that was enough to say, okay, this is interesting. This is about a group of people that I have no personal understanding of, no personal experience with. And during that wedding sequence, you still get the famous scene of, someday I'm going to ask you for a favor.
Yep.
And understanding at that moment that information could be power, honestly, is something that I've held on to for the rest of my life. Like The Godfather taught me that fact about life. And so that's my introduction to mob movies. And I could go on from there, but that kind of covers the first step.
You know, what you really brought something up very interesting was that the double film on VHS, which is, if you think about a concept that means nothing to this generation, to our children, right? Like double what?
Right.
Right? Because it's all just streamed. But that was like a physical, like a signature, like a badge. Like, this is something unusual. And, usually, typically it was something that was of
Right.
quality as well, right?
Right.
And you could make arguments that sometimes it was just some of the movies. JFK was one that comes to mind, that an important movie, but maybe a little bloated, sure. But that's interesting. Where I think my relationship with mob movies started, Godfather came along later, but it started for me, and I know you and I watched this movie a lot, and me and my sister watched this movie a lot, was the 1987 Sean Connery, Kevin Costner, Robert De Niro film, The Untouchables.
Yep.
And that was my entry into this world, which is a really interesting one because a lot of times the attractiveness about these mafia, organized crime movies is you root for the bad guy, but that's not where it was with The Untouchables. It was a very traditional, the good guys are good guys, the FBI agents, The Untouchables, Elliot Ness, and the bad guys are really bad guys, Al Capone and his lot. So it kind of was atypical of what is so attractive about the mob movies. And a weird entry, I think, into the genre. It was a very good movie, but I remember that got me interested, and then from there it went on to other films, including The Godfather, and I did gravitate to that whole, I wanted to be a gangster.
Right. And I
wanted to be one of these folks.
Right. There's something appealing about it, even though the moral of 90% of them is that, these people get their comeuppance. But even still, you want to be the guy that's sitting behind the desk. You want to be the guy that people come to and say, Godfather, help me out with this problem. And you want to say, I'm going to help you out with this problem.
Because the power is attractive.
Yeah.
But that power used for seemingly good or for justice by maybe a different avenue or different means of what would typically be, the police and the judicial system, and really evidenced in nowhere better than in the original Godfather movie. So very attractive, because like Don Corleone, the Godfather, he's bringing true justice to his people.
Right.
He watches out for his people, his family. They call him the Godfather as a sign of respect. It's not a title. It's not a rank. It is something that he earned or that he gave to himself. It's something that other people gave to him, the Godfather, because they respected him so much, and that was very attractive. And it's The Godfather is one of those films that very unique, but it was one of the handful of like good guy. Good nature is probably not the right word, but good guy. If there's a devil on one shoulder and an angel on the other, the Godfather's in that angel on the shoulder mob movie.
Right.
Time.
Yeah. The idea of honor among thieves.
Honor among thieves, and no one expressed that better than Vito Corleone.
Yep.
And interestingly enough, is the sequel was really about that whole thing imploding upon Michael, and no longer was he honorable. And could not live up to his father's image. In fact, he was the logical conclusion of his father. Had his father lived long enough to see all the things that Michael had seen, he probably would have ended up a lot more like Michael than he would have liked. But it was good. It was such a great film. It attracted you to that lifestyle, whatever, right? Not truly, but it seemed attractive because they had power. They could do things that the police wouldn't. Kind of like what makes Batman attractive, right? Is that, well, the police would not give you justice to the funeral. The guy who runs the funeral parlor.
Yep.
But Don Corleone will and avenge his daughter who lost her beauty. And will bring Enzo the baker, make him a citizen of the United States, and take care of all the people around him, and raise his family, right, and all that stuff that Don Corleone did. So very attractive, right? And that was a magnet, but the entree wasn't Godfather. It was other movies. It was as I put The Untouchables, a little bit of Blue Velvet, which is not a mafia movie. It is a crime movie. Frank Booth was a drug dealer, and he was an awful, horrible person, but he was interesting. He was interesting to watch, and he and the Harry Dean Stanton, was not Harry Dean Stanton, Dean Stockwell's character, who sang
In Dreams by Roy
Orbison. That's right. Horrible, evil, awful people, but you couldn't take your eyes off of them, so they were interesting. There was a little bit of that. Reservoir Dogs.
Oh, good one.
Very much.
I hadn't even thought about Reservoir Dogs.
Yeah, because Reservoir Dogs it showed you the good, honorable bad guy, Mr. White, and it also showed you the bad guy, which was Mr. Blonde, Vic Vega, and all the sort of all the rest of the folks in between, and that was a really interesting. It was also an interesting entree into that world because it had really interesting dialogue. Now, I don't think Quentin Tarantino writes dialogue that human beings ever would speak, but he wrote interesting, snappy dialogue that drew you into the world. And it also made you think about all these movies. I think for the most part do. Made you think about the broader world that these characters must live in. Like, the Reservoir Dogs must live in a really interesting crime world. It must be very John Wick-esque, where they're trading coins and doing jobs for each other and getting cool nicknames and have really neat origin stories. But yeah, the Reservoir Dogs is also in there. I think I saw that before I did Godfather. A couple others. King of New York
with Chris Walken. Yeah,
I recently watched that because I had my notes. Like I don't remember this, so I watched it when I had a few minutes. That's a terrible movie. There's a reason why I don't remember it because it was a really boring movie. But it was definitely in that genre, that crime, organized crime, gang lord. Donnie Brasco, which is in the. That's on the Angel on Your Shoulder side, right? Because you got Joe Pistone who's playing Joe Pistone, who is the undercover cop, who was undercover FBI agent, who was undercover for years. As Donnie Brasco, you had Al Pacino's character, which Ruggio, I can't remember.
I don't know the character's name.
Very likable, very sympathetic. Son was in, nearly died of a drug overdose. Very, very good movie. Extremely likable. Really brought me into that world. You had Sonny Red, Sonny Black. You had Fugazi. You had this vocabulary.
Forget about it.
And then they'd give each other Christmas gifts. Here's $1,000 for Christmas, and then the other one, Johnny Depp would give Al Pacino $1,000. Al Pacino would give Johnny Depp $1,000. It would be kind of a wash, and then Al Pacino would need to borrow the $1,000 he just gave to him because it was also, it showed you that there was this blue collar, like almost impoverished elements to these guys, but they were always behind. They always owed money upstream, and it was a losing lifestyle.
Donnie Brasco is an interesting film. I really, really like it. It's a good movie. But that kind of takes me back to the Honor Among Thieves conversation that we've been having. Because and I feel, listeners, if I'm wrong, tell me in the emails or the comments or whatever, but I feel like spoilers for a 30-year-old movie, that doesn't exist. You've had your chance to watch Donnie Brasco.
Yep.
So at the end of the movie, when they find out that Depp has been this undercover FBI agent and that Pacino's the one that let him get close, and he's going to be sent for, and he gets that knock on the door, and he's like, "Can I just tell my wife goodbye?" And he says, "Hey, I'm gonna go out for a minute. I'll see you later." And he goes with them willingly, knowing what his fate's gonna be.
Yep.
I mean, like that level of Honor Among Thieves, for whatever reason, really impresses me, and I don't know why, but that is the shining example of Honor Among Thieves for me. Is Donnie Brasco.
Donnie Brasco is a great film. Great performance by two actors in a film that doesn't really get a lot of attention. I don't think when we talk about great Johnny Depp roles, I mean, Donnie Brasco's top 3 easily. I'm struggling to think of one I like better, and Pacino, obviously, she has so many good performances, but it's top 5. Another one, though, and I mentioned this, one of the things I like about mob movies, the world building and the vocabulary. The vocabulary goes into the world building. You got the Fugazi, you got the Sleeps with the Fishes. I think we're going to talk a lot more about Godfather in a minute. But another film I watched around the same time, and I would say this cemented me, and I still go back to this movie. I watched it in preparation for this. Things to Do in Denver When You're Dead.
Yeah, Andy Garcia.
Andy Garcia and Christopher Walken and Treat Williams and Christopher Lloyd. Great cast. That is the weirdest Christopher Walken performance. Or you think about Christopher Walken at his most Walken. When this movie's over 30 years old now, I think you're right at 30 years old. He's never done better. He's not done better since. He's imitated that performance over and over again, including Suicide Kings, which came out just a few years later. But I don't think he's been more weird Walken than he was as the man with a plan, as the mob boss in the wheelchair.
Are we defining... Are we saying he's never been more weird, or are we saying he's never had a better performance?
Well, he's never been more weird. He's never been more Walken. It was the Walken performance that defined Christopher Walken. And that in his weirder performance, he's had more straight performances, but in his weirder performances, he's never achieved anything that was that weird and that original and that good. It all, to me, feels like when he's being weird, he's imitating that performance as a man with a plan. Andy Garcia is Jimmy the Saint. You had this world, you had all these terms, you had boat drinks. Which meant like boat drinks. They say they mean that, hey, when we're retired, we're going to hang out on a boat. We're going to have drinks. It was this sort of aspirational thing for retirement that they knew they would probably never get. Buckwheats, all of them. Walken would say, everybody's got a Christopher Walken impression. I'll just go ahead and do it. The Buckwheats, all of them, Jimmy. All of them. And like, what's a buckwheat? Well, he was saying that they're dead, right? But he was saying it in a way that they had this vocabulary like, oh, there's a great story behind buckwheats. There's a great story behind why the man in a plan's in a wheelchair and he can't move his arms or his legs or anything. It was a Jimmy the Saint. He was a big deal in Jersey, and now he's in the West Coast. There's a store in Denver, actually. Where was he at? Well, thanks to Denver. That was set in L.A.
They gave us in the title.
That whole story, right? The whole crew, they get this eclectic, crazy crew that wasn't crazy for the sake. It's like, okay, what's the weirdest cast of characters?
Sure.
Wacky. Treat Williams likes to beat up dead bodies in the morgue. No, but it was just well put together. Great dialogue, and I think it just it's like, this is world building. This is a universe that I'm interested in, and to me, I just pretend that all other mob movies are set in this world. Because it's so interesting.
The shared universe of mob movies. The shared
universe. The man with the plan, Christopher Walken. And it just, Andy Garcia he's so good in everything he's in. And we're going to talk about more of it later. But, and then I think at that point, somewhere in there, I saw The Godfather, and that, I was like, I'm dead set, I'm done. These movies, I saw The Godfather. I saw The Godfather, I don't mean I just saw The Godfather.
Yeah,
I
saw
watched 1, 2, and 3, right? The broader saga, not... I know that there's something called the Godfather Saga proper.
Yeah, which is a mistake.
Yeah, which is a mistake, the re-edited version. But let's just, if we backtrack, so I think we've set, right, like what got us in, what's attractive, and before we go on to the next phase, which there is certainly a next phase in mob movies, let's stop talking about the Godfather for a few minutes. I think we're going to have to address the question. Which is the best Godfather? And then, just as controversial, which is the worst?
I have my answers to each question.
The Godfather movies. So first of all, I'm in the process very slowly of reading the book. I love the Godfather movies. I've watched them. I don't know how many times I've watched them. And still not as much as I've watched Bloodsport, but it's getting close right now. Listen,
the gold standard.
The gold standard's Bloodsport. If only Godfather had Jean-Claude Van Damme. He should have played Luca Brasi.
Yeah,
he wouldn't have been killed. No, they would have had to have sent Steven Seagal.
He would have done the splits, and it would have been an entirely different movie.
Yes. Steven Seagal is Salazzo in versus Van Damme as Luca Brasi.
I can't imagine Van Damme at the wedding though. It's like, on this day of your daughter's wedding, I want to give with the Don Corleone, on this day of your daughter's wedding.
Why are you doing the splits in my office? Luca, that is weird. I'm scared of you, Luca.
But on this day of your daughter's wedding.
Stop showing your naked buttocks.
Yeah, it would have been a different film, that's for sure.
I can't do a Don Corleone. No. You know in my heart what I'm trying
absolutely.
to do.
So anyway.
A guy with a sore throat.
Godfather. We were talking about The Godfather.
Yeah, so, I totally lost track. Oh, yeah, so brilliant, beautiful, up and down. I'm trying to read the book. I'm going to finish the book. The book is not that great. I think the problem with the book is that reading it after watching the films, you're comparing a middling book to one of the greatest movies ever made.
Yeah, it's a very schlocky novel.
Pulpy, I think is how you describe it. I think it's a very fair. There's a little bit of artistry, and you can see where that comes out, but then you get stuck on, characters that are immaterial to moving the plot forward for chapter after chapter, and
right, and that's the movie
Fontaine.
The studio wanted, and when they got Coppola, they got him for a song because of some financial issues that he'd been in, thanks to American Zoetrope, which there's a fantastic documentary out there about that if anyone cares. But Coppola came on, didn't want to direct The Godfather, thought the book was awful. And then finally just decided, okay, I'm in this situation. I better turn this into something I want to do. And so, I mean, to say that Coppola is responsible for the state of The Godfather, I think is completely valid. That is his movie from top to bottom.
Have you seen, not to get too far aside, but the miniseries The Offer on Paramount Plus, which is the fictional telling of how The Godfather got made from the point of view of the producer, Al Ruddy?
I saw the trailer, and the fact that it was a fictionalization of it turned me off to the thing, so I have not seen it.
We're 2/3 of the way through it. It's good.
Is it?
I'm not going to pretend it's great, but it's pretty good. Al Pacino said about half of it was true, which it's actually not bad for that kind of telling. The cool part is that you get to see other actors playing these classic roles, right? You got somebody, playing Al Pacino. You get somebody playing Brando. All of them, right? James Caan, and that's actually pretty interesting to see them in the character. And the guy that got playing Brando, I don't know who it is, but is just mind-blowingly good.
It's probably the guy they had in Island of Dr. Moreau.
No, he's not 500 pounds. But he is caked with white makeup. Very, very bizarre looking. Anyways, I would actually suggest it because it's fairly well done. It's very made for TV-ish, even though it's made for streaming. But there's still, you can kind of tell that it still comes through. It tries to look a station above where it's at, but it doesn't quite get there. But it's actually quite good. And, if even half of it's true,
it's worth watching.
The guy playing Luca Brasi
is
played by Lou Ferrigno.
Oh,
it's
really?
worth the price of admission alone.
I can see that.
It actually
totally works.
It totally works.
Much better than Jean-Claude Van Damme.
Why are you so tiny? I don't even know what Lou Ferrigno really truly sounds like. He sounds like the Hulk. When I heard about it, I was like, I'm going to watch this because I want to see who's playing Luca Brasi. I was like, oh, Lou Ferrigno. Well, I'm in.
Yeah.
Because that's inspired.
Yeah.
And it totally works on every level.
That's fun.
But anyway, because Tony Montana, not Tony Montana. That's the Scarface. The guy who played Lenny Montana, I think. Lenny Montana played the character of Luca Brasi. He was an actual mob enforcer.
Oh, was he? I didn't know that.
He was a mob enforcer, and he was a professional wrestler before that. Lenny Montana, and it explains to you in The Offer how, with some degree of truthfulness, because I'd read the stories about this before the show came out, how he came to be in the movie. Anyways, far aside, but it's actually a pretty good companion piece to The Godfather if you're into it like I am. Mary, who does not care for The Godfather movies, my lovely wife Mary, she actually really likes The Offer.
Well, good.
She thinks because it's like, well, this is entertaining. I don't like Al Pacino that much, but watching this little guy pretend to be Al Pacino is kind of interesting. So. But anyway, so back to The Godfather. You're right. That is, you could put that on Coppola. Coppola coached Puzo through writing a screenplay that worked. He had an amazing cast
Yeah.
who was drawn to the material.
And he fought for that cast.
He did. I know that because I've watched The Offer.
Yes, you have. I know that because I've studied the film.
Yes, well, there's two ways to go about it. I could do it the lazy way, but no, right. But what you'll find is that at least my understanding is they also fought for him. That by fighting for that cast and particularly getting Brando on board, that once he had that an actor of that that gravitas in the picture, that other things he was able to make other things happen, like the casting of Al Pacino, because he was able to say, look, I got Brando, we got Brando involved, I did that, so let me do other things. And it is such a beautiful picture. The pacing is slow, and it is not something that you would think of. Modern movies are not made this way.
True.
And it is a real shame because the slowness just gives you time to savor the beauty of the wedding scene and the meeting with the individual folks coming in and asking for the favors.
And when you say it's slow, I mean, people say a movie's slow, and that's a disparagement, right? If somebody out there has never seen The Godfather, don't think for a moment that slow equates to boring.
No, it equates to the simmer.
Yeah.
It's like cooking smoking meats, right?
There you go.
You got to do it slowly, and that you just soak in all of the brilliance of the movie, the performances, even the sets. It is slow, and I would say that movies made in the 50s, 60s, and 70s are made differently than movies in the 80s, 90s, and today, because
Absolutely.
They were made a little bit slower, a little bit more thoughtful. It's often to their credit that they're made that way.
Yeah, no, during the 80s, the amount of time between cuts shrunk considerably. I mean, that's a statistic if you're into like movie editing and
I did not know.
nerdy stuff like that. Yeah, and a lot of people point to music videos as being the cause of that. I don't know if that's completely the cause of it, but you look at films and there's no question that things starting in the early 80s to even modern times, they're much faster. They don't hold a shot nearly as long as films from the 70s and 60s do. So that does add very much to the kind of the soaking up that you're talking about. You're living in the world of 1940s New York. When you're watching The Godfather, you're living in Sicily. When he spends that portion of the film over there, it becomes the surroundings and the lighting and the color palette of the film. Using browns almost exclusively, and then also with the way that it's lit. Where if you go look at any other film made in Hollywood during that time, it's all bright, it's front light, there's no shadows. And in The Godfather, everybody's eyes are covered in shadows. Yes. Every room is dark. It is pushed as far. It's like the bare minimum light to expose the film and the camera. And you
would like The Offer because so much of that plays a part. I really think you should watch it because that all plays a part in it. The debates that were going on behind the scenes and how all those were really controversial choices.
They were. Absolutely. No film. You watch it with today's sensibilities and you're like, okay, The Godfather, I get a good movie. No film looked like that.
It was part of that. That and what Kubrick was doing were creating the patterns that modern filmmaking follows.
Absolutely.
So it doesn't seem so shocking to us today, but. So, anyways, we obviously love The Godfather.
Absolutely.
So, I want to ask you a question.
Sure.
And I have a take on this that I think you may call it a hot take. I think some people just call it a bad take. Who do you think is the most honorable characters? Honorable characters. I meant to say characters in The Godfather. In the series, in the first film, whatever. What characters stand out to you? Not just your favorite. But which ones are like
the most honorable?
Yeah.
Jeez. Maybe Kay. I mean, she doesn't come out clean from the films either.
She doesn't.
Golly, who's the most honorable? That's a strange question. It's not Michael. No question.
It's not Michael. And He made a couple of decisions. I think I think the key decision for him was the Fredo decision.
Yes.
Spoiler alert: he kills. Fredo killed in the second one.
And Fredo's his brother.
Also, the inventor of Alfredo sauce.
Right.
It's delicious.
Yeah. So he left a legacy. But to me, Michael's moment is, you can ask me about my business this one time. One time you can ask me about my business.
Yep.
Did you do X, Y, and Z? No. That's the moment that, as an audience member, you're just like, it's over for this guy. You know, there's no, how do you redeem a character like that? And we'll eventually get to Godfather Part 3, but as much as it is maligned, I sincerely appreciate the effort of that film to attempt to redeem Michael Corleone. I think that it was a fascinating way to take the trilogy. But anyway, golly, do you have someone in mind?
I have two in mind.
Luca Brasi, is he one of them?
No, Luca Brasi is not one. He's despicable. But at least he's consistent.
That's true.
I think that Tom Hagen, because he actually was genuine. He entered the life out of respect and love for Vito.
Yeah.
Not as the Godfather, but as his father.
Yeah.
And he wanted to be accepted as a son. And that was his motivation. It wasn't money, it wasn't power, it was to please Vito Corleone. Not Don Corleone, not the Godfather. Very interesting, where he just wanted to be seen as a son, and he wanted to be seen as a brother. So that's one. And of course he did some bad things too, although not if you look, he's kept his hands pretty clean through most of the film, although Godfather 2, a scene with the senator, he crosses lines.
But then there's also the question of, he keeps himself clean with the protection of being a lawyer.
With the protection of being a lawyer, and the chain of command, which creates the insular, those little bubbles, which is...
when you're consigliere, you're still in the thick of it.
So I'll toss another one at you. This is the hot take.
All right.
Sonny.
Sonny
burned hot.
He did.
But when his sister was getting beat up by Carlo,
he was there.
He's the only one that took action.
He was there. So does it count that he is the most virtuous mainly because he gets killed earliest?
I don't think so, because I think he's totally consistent. He was kind. He brought in Tom Hagen as an orphan boy.
Yeah.
He was known to take care of people. And to be kind. He was violent and rough, but he was typically violent with just his enemies, right?
Yeah.
And I think if we learned anything from Christianity, Jesus says, "Hey, you could be mean to your enemies." Wait, no, I've got it backwards. Sorry, folks. Do not let me preach at your church. I'm
going to need a chapter and verse on that one.
Well, you do anything you want to. They're bad guys. Love your family. Sonny sticks up for his sister when nobody else would.
Yeah, that's true.
And he said, I don't care about the rules. I don't care about, being in hiding here at the compound. I don't care about, not staying out of my sister's marriage, like his father Vito had said. It's between a husband and wife. And Sonny was like, I'm not going to have any part of it. I'm going to kill this guy. And he did die because of it, but because he burned hot and because he led with his heart and not his head. And that's why Sonny was my favorite, because, in this world of people who were doing bad and violent things for money, he was also doing them just because he thought they were the right thing to do. So I don't know, interesting little character study. I truly... I guess the other one that I think is, and one of my favorite characters in the movie is Vincent from the third film, who was just such a great character in a movie that had some serious flaws.
Yeah.
That's played by Andy Garcia, which, again, you put Andy Garcia in a movie, he elevates your film. But yeah. It's interesting. It's interesting to do these little character studies and look at these because they are such well-developed characters that you can consider their their motivations and the effects of choices that they made, choices that they didn't make, and how it would have been. It's interesting, sort of what if. That's how powerful the Godfather universe is, right? It's as interesting of a playground as. I would say, as Marvel and Star Wars and some other things, right? It hasn't been exploited it the same way, but we probably shouldn't.
Right.
But it's pretty fertile ground.
You know, it's interesting you make that comparison, because when you were talking about things to do in Denver when you're dead,
Yes.
and you were talking about there's got to be a story behind buckwheats, there's got to be a story behind how did this character get in the wheelchair?
Yep.
You know, the thought that came to my mind is that's absolutely no different from being like, well, your father fought in the Clone Wars, and then just moving on from that comment. You know, and I think that there
Hey,
is.
what's a clone?
Yeah.
Obi-Wan? No, I want to go back to that.
No, we moved on. No, scum
Wait.
and villainy. That's where we are now in the script.
Tashi Station.
Yeah. Stop whining. Anyway.
That's my voice.
So there's great power in that kind of world building. You know, and I think it's very astute of you to recognize that mob movies have that, just like a science fiction movie would have, or just like a fantasy movie would have. That they plant these little nuggets that make you go, gee, I wonder what that was. And then, you know, when you're sitting in the movie, you're carried along past that point. But then when you're leaving the theater and getting back in your hot car, you're like, what was that? What, you know, yeah, how does that work? And it keeps that kind of, it lets you play in that universe in your head.
Yeah. Interesting. Maybe Brian Herbert could write some more. Write some Godfather.
With Kevin J. Anderson.
With Kevin J. Anderson,
fantastic!
They can extend the Godfather universe. That's a bad idea. That's a Dune joke for our listeners.
Yeah. Let's do a Star Wars Godfather crossover. Does Disney own Godfather yet? Have they purchased that?
No, well, it's a Paramount property.
So yes.
No, Paramount is still.
They're still independent.
Still under the CBS umbrella world.
Good for you,
whatever.
Paramount.
Good, yeah, for now, right?
Paramount and Warner are the only holdouts.
Yeah, Paramount, Warner, and Universal inside of the NBC Comcast world.
All right,
so
good.
There's a few. But, I mean, we're getting down to there will be one media company: Disney, Warner, Paramount.
Yeah.
HBO Plus. Or
I fully believe that to combat the Disney monolith, Warner needs to do a Batman Harry Potter crossover. I think that's what needs to happen.
Well, you know.
You can see the bat flies over Gotham City. You hear Hagrid's voice. You're a wizard, Bruce.
Yeah.
I think it would be great. All right.
I think Lord of the Rings, Harry Potter, and then we can finally settle the Gandalf. Dumbledore debate that I've been having, and no one will participate in the debate with me because it's a stupid debate. But of course, Gandalf is going to win.
Well, yeah, that's a.
We're so off.
There's no debate. All right, mob movies.
A couple of wise guys in Brooklyn are really enjoying the show. Why they bring up that Harry Potter? Baba Ding, I don't even know. Baba Doogie, hey, I made up that word. I hate Harry Potters.
We talking about hobbitses? What is this?
What's a hobbitses?
Let's go back to that Pacino guy.
I shut down some hobbitses last week running a dice game on 4th and 44th. Those are both north-south moons.
That's because
Gianni, you can't go on 4th and 44th. Impossible.
It's magic. We're talking magic.
It's the Earth curves. They met in the poles, and I don't know. That's our mob guy. That's a wise guy skit, folks. That's the one thing we did prepare. No, I'm just kidding. We didn't prepare that.
Get ready for our spin-off sketch comedy podcast.
Yes.
All right. So there's still a question hanging in the air.
Yes.
Best Godfather.
I'm going to go first. I believe that they're very close. Mm-hmm. But I'm going to give the edge to the OG Godfather.
Yes.
And my reasons are they're both no shade on Godfather 2. Godfather 1 is a more straightforward, simpler story. It is benefits by the lack of complexity. There's some things in Godfather 2 that get complex with the Hyman Roths and the double cross, and Frankie Five Angels, what was really going on there when he got almost whacked. I think that the simplicity of the original Godfather benefits it, and the power of Brando's performance outshines even the wonderful performance of De Niro as the Godfather. So I give it the slight edge for those reasons.
I completely agree with you, and I'm glad to hear you say that, because I do have a habit of preferring the first thing of a series. Like New Hope is still my favorite Star Wars movie, and so that's kind of my personality. So I often worry whenever I pick the first thing that, I'm picking it because it is the first thing, and that's where my preferences lie. But no, I agree. I think the first Godfather is the superior film. I agree with the simplicity, but also the almost pure story of the downfall of Michael Corleone.
Yeah.
And starts off very clearly with that trajectory of, he states at the very beginning of the movie, this is my family, this is not what I do. And then by the end of the movie, you can ask me about my business, Kate, just this one time.
Yeah.
And that complete arc of a fall of a character is just unparalleled in storytelling. I think it's one of the best examples of a straightforward narrative that I can think of, and it's a brilliant film. So therefore, the worst Godfather movie.
Oh boy. Well, it's 3, which is so, it's, when you're comparing it to 2 of the greatest films ever made, the 3rd was almost guaranteed to be a letdown, even though it's not that bad, save for a couple of elements.
Agreed. And like I said earlier, I really appreciate that they went for, and seeing Michael Corleone make an effort to redeem himself, and that's some very interesting story beats. Again, going into some of the history of the film and how it was made. Did you know that originally it was supposed to be Tom Hagen's movie? That the entire plot was going to be about Robert Duvall's character.
No, I didn't.
Yeah, and he couldn't. I don't remember what he was in contract for, but he couldn't get out to do Godfather 3. And so that's when Vinny came in. That's when the subplot with the daughter came in, and all that other stuff. So it was originally going to be a very, very different movie.
I knew he was originally supposed to be in it, but he couldn't. So they wrote him in off-screen death. I did not realize he was going to be the.
Yeah, because that was the way I understand it. That was going to be Michael's attempt at redemption. Is Tom was going to take over the family. And then Michael was going to do all the stuff he did with the Catholic Church to try to essentially buy his way into salvation. So I would have loved to have seen that movie, in some alternate universe where they actually got that film. I'd love to see that one. But as it stands, I think it gets way more heat than it deserves. It's not a bad movie by any stretch of the imagination. And it's got some really interesting elements to it. And it's got a shockingly beautiful but tragic ending to it as well. So I think there's value in part 3, and I have no problem, like when I sit down to experience The Godfather, I have no problem watching it as a trilogy. I'm not one of these guys that stops at 2.
No. Do you notice a big difference between the original version and the recut that Coppola did?
Not a tremendous difference. Now, the saga cut, I'm not a fan of.
No, I'm not talking about the saga.
Yeah.
For the folks who don't know, the saga cut is where they took it and put it all in linear order.
Chronological
order, right? So that it starts off with young Vito Corleone and then Robert De Niro. And
right, which completely destroys Godfather 2.
It destroys it, but also takes the impact of the Godfather 1.
That's true, it does.
Because Vito Corleone there's a mystery about that character that it revealed too early, doesn't takes some of the impact away. So
that I'm not a fan of. That I throw that away.
The Godfather 3 cut is called Godfather
Coda, yes.
I couldn't tell I really struggled to find the differences.
No, it's not drastic. Stuff like that, I feel, is more Coppola probably fixing the things that he gets stuck on.
Yeah.
The things that he's like, oh, I wish I'd done this differently, or that always bugged me, like that kind of thing. There aren't very many movies that are recut in that situation that I think benefit from it. I do begrudgingly acknowledge that the filmmaker has the right to do it, but I'm not a fan. I'm more in Spielberg's lane, where he's like, dang, I'm real sorry I ever took the guns out of E.T. I'll never do that again.
Imagine if they would have done that in The Godfather, or all having walkie-talkie.
Yeah, or, suddenly Jar Jar Binks is in The Godfather, because this is what we do with everything.
Clemenza opens up the wrapper, instead of a fish, there's a walkie-talkie. Luca Brasi talks to the fishes?
Over walkie-talkie?
Over walkie-talkie.
Leave the walkie-talkie.
He's at camp. Luca Brasi went to camp, kids.
Leave the walkie-talkie. Take the cannoli.
Yeah.
Yeah, so no, I mean, I have the original trilogy, not the trilogy with Coda, and that's what I watch.
I have the original trilogy, but I also have Coda's. It's available on Paramount Plus. I watched them both and tried to dissect the differences, and they're so they're so subtle that I, as a fan, struggled to tell differences that I think that the differences were not really appreciable. They didn't affect things.
Yeah, and this may be a hot take to some of our listeners, but I feel kind of the same way about Coppola's recutting of Apocalypse Now. Like, all 3 versions, I'm like, okay, I really don't care which one I'm watching because the things that you added really weren't that consequential. So whichever one.
I will say that the newest version of Apocalypse Now that he did has a great sound mix.
They all had great sound
but
mixes.
I mean, you're talking about good for testing out like a Dolby Atmos surround system and getting the effects, the height effects, outstanding.
Now, that's something else we should mention real quick while we're on Godfather is edited by and sound designed by Walter Murch, who is incomparable. One of the finest film editors ever and one of the finest sound designers ever. And in one scene in particular, when Michael is going to kill the guy in the restaurant, whose name escapes me. Anyway,
Captain McCluskey and Salazzo.
Thank you, Salazzo. So he's going to kill Salazzo in the restaurant, and what you hear is not music, it's not restaurant clatter, it's not people speaking, it's not Walla, it's a freight train. And if you think about that scene, there's absolutely no reason to hear a freight train. Other than, in some of the exterior shots, you'll see a train go by. But using that sound in that scene, even though it doesn't make logical sense, makes complete story sense. And I love when films do little things like that.
Interesting.
So I just wanted to point
now
that
I'm
out.
going to go back and check that out because I knew that there was some interesting background noise, but I didn't think about what it was.
It's a freight train, and you read Walter Murch's explanation of the scene, and he's like, we wanted to explain what was going on in Michael's brain, and how do you do that? That's a tall order because there's no dialogue in that scene. The Salenzo's talking, but they bleed that out because Michael's not listening to it. Right. Michael's thinking about what's about to happen, and so they do this freight train, and it works flawlessly. That's the level of filmmaking that exists in The Godfather.
Wow. Now I am gonna go watch that. So Godfather 3. I think that I generally have a joke about it, but I generally have a fairly high opinion of the movie. I mean, listen, I don't want to pile on because everyone says this, but the weak link was Sofia Coppola. She wasn't. And I'm not sure what I've seen her in otherwise, but not a good enough actress to be in that film. It was also not a great role. I think if there was a giant strategic misstep in the plotting of the movie, that relationship with her and Vincent, it was weird, it was gross, it made no sense, and it added a tension that just simply did not need to be there.
Yeah, and I think it's the role's problem, not Sofia Coppola's problem, because I've seen Sofia Coppola in other roles, and of course she's gone on to be a very interesting director in her own right. So I don't, when I watch it, I don't think, oh, she's not acting up to the level. I watch it and say, this was a story mistake, and this was part of that damage of not being able to have Robert Duvall.
It made the character of Vincent Mancini, who is Sonny's illegitimately born son, to Lucy Mancini, who was the girl that Sonny was having an affair with at the wedding of his sister. Yep. And so that was Vincent was his son, not a character from the book. But a great character, played by a great actor, really interesting, had the good parts of Michael, had the good parts of his father, the passion, had some of the magnetism that his grandfather Vito had, even some of the softness, sensitivity that his Uncle Fredo had, right? So all the good parts of the Corleone men were sort of made manifest in this character of Anthony, not Anthony, Vincent. Anthony is a Mike Corleone's son. But yeah, they added that creepy factor that just did not need to be in there, especially when you had such powerful moments as Michael Corleone confessing to the new pope that he murdered his brother and breaking down and showing this vulnerability that Michael Corleone had not shown in the movies. Period. Right. The closest he gets to it is when he's in. He's in that scene where he's killing the captain and Salazzo, when he shows that moment of stress. And then you never see it. You didn't see it before. You didn't see it after that. Right. That was the transformation of Michael Corleone. Except for when he starts to break down in part 3, he has his diabetic stroke, and then he has his confession. There's so much good stuff there that they just added that creepiness. Mm-hmm. A tension that did not need to exist, a tension that did not further the plot of the movie. Because you had some beautiful stuff in Sicily. I also think that the stuff Michael Corleone taking Kay on a sightseeing through Sicily, there was probably better ways to do that. That was not something Michael Corleone would have done. He was far too dangerous for him to do things like that. He was still a man people wanted to kill.
Right.
You had good things in part 3. The Joey Zaza stuff, played by not by Danny Aiello. Not who's the guy who plays Joey Zaza in part 3, the bad guy. It's
I would have said Danny Aiello.
It's not Danny Aiello. It's the guy who looks like Danny Aiello. There's like 3 actors. Joe Montega. Is it Joe Montega?
Okay, he does look like Danny Aiello.
Yeah, there's like 3 actors: Danny Aiello, Joe Montega, and I can't remember who the other one is. But at any rate, you have that. He was a good bad guy. He's the one who does the helicopter attack on the bosses across the country when Michael Corleone's handing out his checks. Mm-hmm. From the casino, basically buying out all his partners and working to make the business legitimate. It's such a great movie.
Yeah.
And even the Corleone daughter, Connie, had an opportunity to shine in that film and show that she was a Corleone.
Yes.
Just like her father and brothers.
Which is why when you said who was the most virtuous, I did not pick Connie. I thought about it.
Yeah, it's Joe Montega.
Joe Montega, okay.
Yeah, Joe, there's a couple actors.
Okay, this is an embarrassing question because I should know this. Is Danny Aiello in it at all? Because I really thought he was.
Danny Aiello is in Godfather 2. In Godfather 2, Danny Aiello is one of the people who attempts to assassinate Frankie Five Angels in the bar.
That's why I'm
very
confused.
brief scene when they're killing him. They're Garrote, I think I'm saying that right. And the cop walks in. Danny Aiello is very briefly in it.
Okay.
Joe Montega. Yeah, there's a couple of those guys that look.
That makes me feel better.
Yeah, kind of alike. But anyway, so so The Godfather, huge films in the pantheon of mob movies. But there's another director who made his own mark in mob movies that you have to talk about, because I think in some ways he is. It's not the opposite, but it is a very different, very mean-spirited view.
Not Honor Among Thieves.
Not Honor Among Thieves. In fact, Scorsese.
Yes.
Enter Martin Scorsese. Shows a very different world, starting with Mean Streets, continuing through his other films. And then, I think the Goodfellas, Casino, and then The Irishman being the 3
trilogy
that I look at as being critically important. So let's talk a little bit, just real quick. Mean Streets, I had very few memories of it. I started to watch it, and I remembered having a generally positive view of it, but I really struggled to get into it. And I can't quite figure out why, but
I would go on a limb and say it's because you know what's coming. And I don't mean what's coming in Mean Streets. I mean what's coming in Scorsese's catalog.
Right. It's like, I keep seeing a lesser version. I can just go watch Goodfellas and see, this come to fruition. And but it also the relationship with De Niro was there, and they've made some great movies together.
Yes, they have.
So you want to just jump to Goodfellas?
I do want to jump to Goodfellas.
Goodfellas is. It is everything that The Godfather is, but mean, right?
Yes.
If The Godfather if The Godfather is built on favors, which is what that whole world is built on. You do a favor for me, a service for me, I'll do a service for you, and that's how we accumulate and protect wealth and status. Goodfellas is about fear, and it's about you're going to be stabbed in the back the second you turn your head. Yeah. Despicable evil characters. It's based on a true story. Henry Hill is the mobster. By the way, you know what the shortened version of Henry is? The nickname of Henry? Hank Hill, yes. So imagine what that movie would have been like.
So you're telling me that King of the Hill is a sequel to Goodfellas.
He's in witness protection. He's changed his name.
That's amazing.
He sells propane accessories.
All right.
Bobby, where did you hide that body, boy? He's playing video games. I don't know. That's a terrible Hank Hill. I find that very interesting that Hank Hill, the beloved blue-collar propane salesman, icon of Fox's Sunday night animation in the late 90s.
I'm going to say that was a coincidence.
I am going to agree, but I would love to see Hank Hill.
That's a mashup waiting to happen.
Yeah, with Tommy DeVito.
Yeah, somebody needs to do that on YouTube.
Think I'm a clown? No, I don't. This meat is not cooked properly, Tommy.
All right, so I'll say this about Goodfellas, and I'm going to disappoint half of our listeners out there, because I feel like when you're a fan of mob movies, you either feel that Godfather is the best ever, or you feel that Goodfellas is the best ever.
Godfather's the best ever.
I'm firmly in Godfather camp.
Yes.
In fact, I would go as far as to say I don't enjoy watching Goodfellas. It's so mean-spirited.
It is. It is, and I struggle with it.
Yeah, and performances, fantastic. I love Ray Liotta, God rest his soul.
Fantastic actor.
Fantastic actor.
Best performance in a film chock full of
really good performances. Yeah, and to stand out in that cast, I mean, kudos to him. You can't fault the acting, you can't fault the script, you can't fault the story, but my goodness, there is not a redeeming quality of that movie. I mean, it's just pain and suffering from start to finish.
It is, and the character's most likable, which is Henry Hill. They actually. He was much worse than that in real life, what I've read. And that they had to, in order to give you a sympathetic character, they had to make him more likable. Did you know that Henry Hill wrote a cookbook that is recipes, because he did a lot of Italian cooking. He did that in the movie, right? He made the dinner for his family. They did the cooking in prison. I believe they cooked on clean burning propane and propane accessories. But he actually made and he would share recipes that were modified to work with ingredients that you could get in the federal prison system. And I've read reviews of the cookbook. Supposedly it's a really good cookbook. I thought about buying it because I'm like, it's legitimate Italian.
Sure.
And in that, spectrum of food, I'd probably really enjoy it.
That's interesting.
No, you're right. And, Pesci is terrifying. Pesci is a force of nature in that movie. Jimmy Conway, Robert De Niro character, is also very scary, but he's more rational. But Tommy DeVito, which is the character that Joe Pesci plays, is terrifying. When they kill the maid guy in the bar, in the hit that ultimately, caused Tommy to lose his life, that was so unexpected. I thought that they might. I didn't know what was going to happen, but I remember watching the first time thinking, I would never have guessed. It's a rule. You don't touch a made man. Yeah. It was shocking. It was brutal. It is a hard movie to watch, right? And but I think it is a great movie. I think harder still is the next film, if you're ready to go on to the next movie.
Is that Casino?
Casino.
Yeah.
I think that's a tougher movie to watch. I think that as brutal as Tommy DeVito was, the character of Nicky, which is basically the same character, is even more amped up. And it's got to be, honestly, that scene with the Irishman whose head is in a vice, that is just way more than I can stomach or stand. I love Casino. I struggle which one is better than Casino or Goodfellas. I mean, Goodfellas is loosely based on a true story. Casino is sort of an amalgam of different characters at the time, but not really based on any. There's not one through line of truth.
Sure.
I will say that the performance that kills me in that movie, I think is the best performance in that movie, is James Woods as Lester Diamond, the creepy drug salesman pimp guy. Such a great performance.
James Woods is good.
He is good. He's so slimy. He's so slimy, and I have no idea what he's like in real. No idea whatsoever. I hear that he's actually a nice, decent guy. I have no idea, right? But I wouldn't surprise me if he was a slime ball because he plays one so effectively. But then it's like saying, "Oh yeah, Joe Pesci, he murders people on the weekends. He kicks them in the head till they die, and that's why he's so good at it on screen." I have no idea. I love that movie.
Joe Pesci was in Home Alone, and James Wood has no counterpart.
I'm struggling to think of a James Woods movie where he does try to murder a child. That's You're right. He doesn't have a counterpart.
There you go.
Still pretty brutal. You think about it. Home Alone is an evil film.
It could be a mob movie if you think about it. Anyway,
It could be.
I would give
Plumber Bandits or whatever.
I would give the torch to Goodfellas over Casino. But I will say I don't enjoy watching either film.
Casino is tough to watch.
Yeah.
The one thing I like about Casino is that it does feel like you're actually seeing like almost like a documentary in some of the way it's presented. Like, here's how we did business, and here's how we got the money back up to the, to the Kansas City underboss. And
well, not only that, but the time frame it takes place in. The costumes are flawless.
Yes.
The setting is, that, I guess if you watched it muted, and well, I don't even know if that would do it, but
muted, no screen. Just,
But I don't want to make it sound like there's not redeeming elements of Casino. It is just a horribly violent.
Yes.
There's no silver lining to it. And it's just bad people doing bad things.
It is.
But it's very well made bad people doing bad things.
Generally speaking, they get what's coming to them.
Yeah, but so I don't know that, especially when we're talking mob movies, and these are the focal characters of these films, I don't know that comeuppance is enough for me.
Right.
Because we expect that. That's a given. Whereas in The Godfather, you have people who are truly wrestling with these decisions and wrestling with where life has placed them. In Goodfellas and Casino, you seem to just have just a bathing in it, just being completely evil for evil's sake and enjoying that. And that disconnects me from the movie, at least another level.
Yes.
Whereas with Godfather, I can identify with some of these people. I can feel sympathy for them. I can understand where they made the decisions they made, even if they're completely different decisions than I would make. But Goodfellas and Casino, and even some of Scorsese's other films, they're almost cartoons to the point where I don't identify with them. And then it comes down to, am I having a good time watching this film?
I can't disagree with anything you said. And these are not movies that technically they're very good. Their performances are good. But I don't feel in any way satisfied after watching them.
Yeah.
I feel kind of dirty and gross. But they are great examples of these films. They're also great examples of what the life is really like, right? To the best of our ability to understand. So Godfather romanticized it.
Yeah,
Godfather
absolutely.
gave the folks who were, my understanding is, in that mob life, they looked and said, hey, listen, the Godfather looks pretty glamorous. I like the way they talk, like the way they act. Let's adopt some of that. Whereas
Right.
Goodfellas reflected what was really going on deep in their core, in their hearts.
Right.
I think that's why they're both effective movies. They show two different sides of the same coin, how they see themselves and then how they really are, and they're sort of
I think that's a conscious choice by Scorsese.
Oh, yes.
He's going for the realism every time. I don't feel like he has the interest in doing the romantic side of anything that we're talking about.
So a couple other, if you're ready to move on from Casino, a couple other films that he made before we get to The Irishman. Gangs of New York is sort of like an early, organization crime. I mean, you had the Irish gangs, you had the Italian. I don't have a whole lot to say about it. Honestly, the best character in the movie, the most interesting, was Liam Neeson. He died in the first 10 minutes of the movie as the priest.
Yeah.
It's not a movie that I like.
No.
I don't even... the soundtrack's interesting.
Yeah. No, I agree. It came and went as far as I was concerned. When Leo was cast, that was surprising. Like he had not done anything of that nature before. But I think that he and Scorsese proved that that was not a limitation. I mean, he was totally fine. And then went on, I think, for every Scorsese movie since he's been in them. So, yeah.
Just about. Let's talk about The Departed.
All right.
Speaking.
Okay, so The Departed I do want to talk about. And I wonder if you feel this way about it, too. The Departed seems to me like a turning point in mob movies. And so in my mind, there's everything that was before The Departed. And then The Departed kind of said, okay, let's take mob movies and let's put them in present day. And then there was everything that's been made after The Departed, that involves mob in kind of like in our time, as opposed to it being a period piece. Like I can't. Was there another mob movie that had an impact the way The Departed did that took place in modern day?
That took place in modern day. Not that I can think of. I mean, The Irishman had elements that were sort of kind of modern day.
But I mean, The Departed was.
It was in
now.
The moment. Right?
Yeah.
That's a good question. I'm consulting my notes. Eastern Promises, Uncut Gems.
You're going some deep cuts there.
I am. Eastern Promises is a very good organized crime movie. It's the Russian.
With
mafia, real horses,
yes.
Nude bathhouse,
yes.
steam room fight scene. Yeah. No, I think that getting. I think you make a good point there. I'm not sure that there is.
Yeah.
I never thought about it from that point.
It's just. I mean, to me, that was just kind of a moment that signaled a break. I mean, I don't know that we'll ever see a movie like The Godfather again. But it feels like The Departed has kind of ushered in what mob movies are now. Just my thought.
That's very interesting. I don't love The Departed. First of all, it is about an Irish gang. Mm-hmm. So it's a totally different culture. It's something that even Scorsese was not as familiar with. I find it to be a little less interesting. I felt like it was totally about the money, and there wasn't there wasn't the Sicilian heritage, the omerta, the law of silence, the traditions of La Costa Nostra, all that stuff. It was just an Irish gang looking to make money, not afraid of killing cops.
It feels more like a crime movie than a mob movie.
It does, and I also think Jack Nicholson. I think that was a miscast. I think I
really?
don't particularly think his performance. I think he was playing Jack Nicholson, which is something that he gets accused of a lot. And I think that it was more obvious there. I think that he didn't disappear into the role the way that a De Niro disappears into a role inside of a Scorsese film or an Al Pacino does.
I strongly disagree. So I'm not a huge fan of The Departed either, but I thought Nicholson was stellar in this movie. And why I say that is because every moment he's on screen as an audience member, I was terrified. I had no idea what this guy was going to do. I had no idea where he was going. I had no idea when he was going to pull a gun out of someplace. I had no idea when he was going to be friends with somebody. And he embodied that chaoticness so well. Now you could say, well, that is Jack Nicholson, and you would have a point. But I thought he was amazing in that movie. Now, my criticism of the movie is it kind of hangs too much on the surprises. And I'm speaking especially what happens to Leo in the movie. I think if it didn't have that scene, I don't think we'd be talking about it, because I think that's that audiences were so unexpected, and it was such a moment that nobody thought you would ever do that to your lead actor.
Yep.
And then you get the turnaround at the end with Matt Damon.
And Mark Wahlberg.
I think that's why it landed as well as it did. And for me, watching movies, that's never been enough. Like I'm not a fan of I see dead people, that does not carry a movie.
Yeah.
If you have a fantastic movie and you have that, okay, well, that can be magic. But for me, I do think Nicholson's performance is amazing in The Departed, but I think if it didn't have those two elements, people would have been like, well, another fine Scorsese movie. I don't think he would have got the Oscar if it didn't have those elements. But that's my take on The Departed. So it's not my favorite. It's not my least favorite.
Here's a note I have. Has a better cast ever been in a worse movie?
Ooh.
I don't care for the movie, but I think the cast is so good, including Mark Wahlberg, who is underrated and is particularly good in that role. Matt Damon, who comes across just kind of whiny and ineffective and not unbelievable. No one would have believed that this kid was actually a whiz kid. They'd say, who is he, getting his information from? Leo was Leo, but he's great. I think Nicholson was miscast. I think Martin Sheen, who is the brother of the famous actor Joe Estevez. I don't know if you're familiar with that.
I am familiar with Joe Estevez.
Joe Estevez,
his body of work.
Several. Soul Taker,
yes.
Baby Ghost, really good movies.
Yeah.
Werewolf, I believe, Werewolf. I think Martin Sheen was miscast too. And I also think that I'm so used to in these mob movies that they don't ever kill cops. There's like we don't kill cops. It's a big deal to kill a cop. And they just killed like the captain of the police force.
Right. Yeah.
It was kind of it was without repercussions.
Yeah.
I don't. To me, it just felt like it was just not up to Scorsese's standards or the standards of the cast.
I think that's fair. I would have to think long and hard about has a better cast been in a worse movie.
There are answers that there have been better cast in worse movies. It just feels to me like you've got one of the best directors of the last 100 years, and you've got
an amazing cast.
And for some reason, it did not produce a brilliant movie.
It was a remake too.
Was it? I didn't know that.
It was a remake of a movie called Internal Affairs, which was a Hong Kong film.
Okay, you know what? I think I did know that, but I didn't think too much of it just because it was.
So I really think it was all just about killing Leo. And, I think because that was a shocking scene and the same thing happens in the Hong Kong film. And so you had this like really amazing pivotal moment in this movie that's totally unexpected, and then you're Martin Scorsese and you hear about this Hong Kong film and Hollywood says, hey, why don't you direct a version of it? And you're like, okay, I can see how all these pieces came together and then made just kind of a mediocre movie.
At first he said, is it a comic book movie? Because I make cinema, not that
those
trash.
Are not films. Yeah. He deserved what he got for that, but I kind of agree with him.
Silly, and it was a thing that just made him look like he was looking down on others.
No, it's true.
At a certain point, you should just be above comments like that.
No, I agree.
Christopher Nolan made a comic book movie. He made 3 of them.
And
if Christopher Nolan could do it, then
yes, you're right, absolutely right. And I thought Downey Jr. responded very classy.
I don't even remember. That. I didn't care enough. Yeah. I'm sure Downey Jr. always has a classy response, and it actually drove him back to drugs. It's so sad. No,
wow.
No, I'm sure he had a great classy response. He probably never thought twice about it.
And
his pool's heated, right? What does he have to worry about?
So, any other Scorsese movies on the list, or are we moving from him?
Well, we have to talk about
The Irishman. Of course.
I think that The Irishman is the most recent one. It clocks in nearly 4 hours. I'm not going to make any jokes about how long it is because it was streaming, right? You could watch it in 2 or 3 settings. I watched it in one setting. I couldn't sleep one night, and I watched it, started at about 11 and finished at about 3. And I think that it is got a brilliant 2 hour and 45-minute movie in a 4 hour package, and a little bit of judicious editing could have improved the product. It has some incredible performances, including, I think, Pacino's best performance ever as Jimmy Hoffa. I think he stretched, he disappeared into the role, and I think De Niro's performance was fine. It was a very De Niro role, based on the book, I Heard You Paint Houses or something, I think is what it's called. I Heard You Paint Houses, Frank Sheeran. I thought it was great to see Joe Pesci back as Russell Buffalino. Harvey Keitel had a relatively small role as a different boss, I remember. Great film, but very good movie, but I think it could have been a great film if it had been just a little bit more, like I said, judicious on the cutting. I think that it was on streaming. I think he had, he could do whatever he wanted, and maybe that freedom caused him to maybe make a few decisions I would not have made. But then again, I'm not Scorsese, but I very much enjoy. I will say one thing though: the technology led to him using old actors that they de-aged, and there were so many scenes when you're supposed to be watching a 20, 30-year-old Robert De Niro, but he's been de-aged and he's walking like an 80-year-old man. You can't hide that. No. And I would have done it the other way. I would have filmed young actors and put their face on or did something. I think that I think that the technology is not going to get that. Like an old man walking, was trying to protect his lower back.
Well, yeah, and that scares me to death for the next Indiana Jones movie. But I'm not a fan of de-aging. I mean, what happened to finding a great young actor you know, I mean, kind of like when they did the Mark Hamill and the Mandalorian thing.
Yeah.
And you have Sebastian Shaw right there, who looks exactly like Mark Hamill. Let somebody else do it. I mean, there's no shame in that. I don't understand this obsession we have with we can't let these people age. I mean, Robert De Niro is an 80-year-old man.
That's right. And he looks, even de-aged, he looks like a creepy 80-year-old man.
Let him be
with
an 80-year-old man.
Yeah.
You need to do something with that character from 60 years ago. Find yourself a decent actor to play that character from 60 years ago. I don't understand why we're so obsessed with this. It would be a
heck of a lot cheaper, too.
And it would look 1,000 times better. Yep. And there's been no de-aging process that the fans have been like, oh, bravo. Flawless.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of the best one I've seen. Maybe in Guardians of the Galaxy 2, the very brief with Ego, Kurt Russell's de-aging. And it was on screen for about 2 minutes. It worked fairly well.
I saw it, but I'm struggling to remember.
But it was brief, right?
Yeah.
So you can get away with something that's a minute or two long, but when it's 45 minutes of your movie,
right,
it does not work.
Yeah, no. So I'm not a fan of that. I really like your idea of the 2-hour, 45-minute cut of The Irishman. I'd love to see that.
I think there's a much better movie inside there that we would be talking about as being equal with Casino and Goodfellas. One thing I did love about it, though, is that you kind of get like a history of America through the lens of the mafia. You know, the Bay of Pigs stuff and other things that were going on. I can't remember all. It was such a long movie. But you know, the labor union pieces and the other world events. You got to see how the mob guys saw that and what their take on it was. Really interesting stuff. And that's not something you necessarily got to see in any other movies before that.
That's a good point. And that kind of speaks to my comment about The Departed earlier. I mean, The Irishman kind of takes us through time in that regard.
Yes.
So that would have been a good point to make then, but I failed. So that's okay.
No, I see what you're getting at.
I mean, I'll put it above Goodfellas and Casino in my personal Scorsese list.
Really? Okay.
I would. Now it does not have the collateral or the importance that Goodfellas and Casino has. I mean, The Irishman is not going to change cinema the way those films did. But I don't watch The Irishman and feel like, ugh. You know? I mean,
yeah. Well, I think that you know, I get it, right? You don't feel horrible. You don't feel great.
Right.
But no, there was... You feel less gross. You feel like you participated in a crime less. Or witnessed a crime, I should say, less. No, it was... I do very much like the movie. I think that Scorsese created maybe an accessibility problem by making it so long. Just my take.
Agreed.
But yeah, so let's... we got a few more things on the list. But real quick, we haven't talked about TV, other than a brief discussion about The Offer. Have you watched any of the, and I can think of a couple off the top of my head, but any of the, like Sopranos or Boardwalk Empire, you watched any of that?
I've seen a couple of episodes of The Sopranos, but that's really it. And I wasn't into it.
Yep. Same thing.
Yeah, so no, and I haven't seen anything of Boardwalk Empire.
I've watched a little bit of Sopranos. It didn't click for me. A couple things. You know, part of the appeal with the mob is these movies is that sort of that Godfather. You know, they're sort of classy and elegant.
And the Sopranos
Tony
are not.
Soprano's like a schlubby guy.
Yeah.
There's nothing. It did not look interesting. Now, I think I may have being a show with many episodes. You may have just caught it in a moment where it wasn't great, and those are the things you have to start from the beginning. It just didn't have a hook for me. I also did the whole therapist gimmick. I was like, you know what? I've already seen analyze this or analyze that. Or
right.
For whatever reason, I didn't feel like that would necessarily work with those kind of characters that I'm used to in this world. Whether it be, you know, the strong, protect your feelings, good-hearted men like Vito Corleone, or, you know, Tommy DeVito, who would kick you to death if you looked at him the wrong way. So I just didn't... And maybe I'm wrong. The other thing is... I have been burned on television series where I've invested time and then you get burned at the end of it. I'm not going to talk anymore because I think that there's a there's an episode in here for us. But we both have had this. So I've been very careful about what I invest my time in.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
A movie, 3 or 4 hours, not a big deal. 70 hours of a TV show, I'm going to be really careful about jumping into it. Boardwalk Empire, I have not, although I gotta say, Steve Buscemi, there's some other really good actors in that. Scorsese did executive produce it. I believe he also directed a few episodes. I really should dive into that one. I think that one's probably all upside.
You know, I love Steve Buscemi. I think he's fantastic. And it's an interesting time period too. You know, an interesting topic. I just don't. That one came as broadcast TV was kind of delving into streaming. And so that was one of those things where I, as an early cord cutter, very early, I just never had the opportunity to watch it. So I should figure out if it's streaming somewhere now, and I should give it a chance.
Isn't it on HBO Max?
I don't know.
I think
probably.
it might be.
Yeah, because it was originally an HBO show.
Yeah, and I was with you, early cord cutter, so I was challenged to find those things. And, I'm just real careful about investing too much time because you can find yourself, I've invested 10 hours and I hate this. And do you keep going? You shouldn't. But if you cut your losses, it feels like sunk time, right? I don't know. It's tough. But I think Boardwalk Empire has got a great chance of success. Sopranos just doesn't speak to me. I'd much prefer limited run series.
Oh yeah. I mean, the Brits have it right.
They do, right? And I'm not an Anglophile, and I'm not going to say something is better because it's over in another country.
No. I don't mean that.
I think in this case they do, right? I know, but people have the. Yeah. I think in this case they did get it right. Although I much prefer the American Office to the British Office, and I have no apologies.
That's
for that.
Fine. But the idea of how many episodes do you need to tell your story?
Right. A beginning, middle, and an end.
Yes, that's the question.
Open-ended TV series doesn't allow for that sort of thing. You can just meander and fall off cliffs. And they usually die long after they should have been put out to pasture.
Absolutely.
So TV, I don't have a whole lot. I do have some. I have some weird ones and one-offs that I wanted to mention real quick. But what else do you have? If we went through the Scorsese, we've hit the two big pillars, right? Which is Coppola, Godfather, the Scorsese library. Yep. We talked about our origins, what brought us to it. What else do we have?
So I am now also down to just the crazy one-offs that I wanted to mention, just to get them out there into the interwebs. And so the two films that I'm going to bring up are A Better Tomorrow and A Better Tomorrow 2.
Oh, okay. Yes.
And
Hong Kong cinema.
These are Hong Kong cinema. John Woo directed. Chow Yun-fat stars them. And these are Hong Kong mob movies, which is a completely different, although approachable version of what we're talking about.
Would that be triads?
Yes. Okay. Yeah. So the Yakuza is Japanese and the triads are the Chinese. So, and when I say approachable, it's because if you watch these, they look like The Godfather. I mean, they're in the suits. They got the skinny black ties. They're trying to be honorable. I feel like a lot of our cinema bled over and influenced Woo as he was making these Hong Kong mobster movies. But Better Tomorrow 1 and 2, I'm singling out because I think that there are outstanding examples of what Hong Kong cinema can provide. And that is a very niche area in the United States. But the people who love Hong Kong cinema absolutely love it. And it's worth delving into if you're interested. These two films, they are melodramatic to an exponential extent. And that is typical of Hong Kong cinema. But you kind of just have to love them for that. And I think it's fantastic. Anyone who's seen A Better Tomorrow 2 knows of the infamous catatonic orange eating scene that takes place halfway through the movie, which it is equal parts phenomenal filmmaking and just completely out of this world, like has no place anywhere. It is a strange scene, and if you can watch that and be like, I see these two people coming together over this orange, then fine, watch any Hong Kong movie you want because you're in the audience for that. But I just love Chow Yun-fat, I love John Woo, and these are two great gangster movies, and they're ones that I knew probably would not come out of this conversation, so I wanted to give them a shout out.
I have not delved into that. I mean, the closest probably is watching Jet Li's The Black Mask from the 90s, which is not close at all.
No.
But and I think I've watched I watched a an organized crime, Michelle Yeoh's Super Cops.
Okay, sure.
Which is a female. It wasn't Super Cops, the Jackie Chan series. It was a female. I can't remember.
Well, it was a shoot off of Jackie Chan's Super Cop.
So I've seen that. But no, I think that Hong Kong films have got a lot of things right. It's particularly in the action, right? Not to stereotype the movies, but they do have excellent action.
Yes, they do.
Particularly Chow Yun-fat, who's just great. He's also extremely intimidating. You think he's kind of like the De Niro of that cinema world, right? De Niro doesn't do nearly as much like Wire Fu. No, I'll have to check those out because I've heard of them. I know of them, but have not watched them. I might have watched back in the day A Better Tomorrow. Maybe. I can't. I can remember. I remember talking about it.
Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me if you've seen the first one.
Yeah.
But in the late 90s, we had trouble finding Hong Kong films. It wasn't easy.
Yeah. You had to go to Suncoast Video.
And sometimes they didn't even have it. But, so I distinctly remember I had a copy of A Better Tomorrow 1, and I had always heard the fabled, 2 and 3 are out there. But those were much harder to come by. So it wouldn't surprise me if you've seen 1. I don't think you've really gone beyond that, as far as my knowledge is concerned.
Those are really good. A couple weird ones. We already mentioned Eastern Promises, which is the European in that realm. Very good movie. That fight scene in the sauna, difficult to watch, but it's a very good movie. Gives you a look at the Eastern European Russian
and
mafia.
Viggo Mortensen is just phenomenal.
Viggo Mortensen's he's great in everything. Uncut Gems, which gives another view of the more modern, the sort of the bookmaking, gambling side of the mafia world, whatever, which is a huge part of it, right? It's even in the Godfather books talked about a lot, about a big source of income for all the families. And Adam Sandler's very good. It's a very interesting movie. I don't know how much. I think I like it. It's one of those that you like kind of feel uneasy about it. Not sure. I know that it was a. Well, let's put it like this. I know it was a good movie. I doubt I'll ever watch it again. But if you haven't seen it, it certainly is a good investment. It also shows Adam Sandler really can act. He is a good actor.
I actually have not seen this one. So
it is. I think you'll, for the most part, enjoy it.
Yeah.
We talked about Heat in the past. Heat is a fantastic organized crime movie. It is. It's not in that sort of ethnic gang family type, but it is really about organized crime. Road to Perdition is another one. I think it's the Chicagoland type organized crime. Tom Hanks, Paul Newman. I haven't watched it in years, but I remember it being very good. I'm going to throw a couple more out at you. I'm going to throw two of the best mafia movies ever made are Batman Begins and The Dark Knight. There is such a strong presence of real-world crime.
That's true.
Organized crime, Gotham City, particularly in Batman Begins, but it also is through that, right? I mean, The Dark Knight is really about these crazy costume cats taking over from displacing the organized crime in the city of Gotham. And I think they have to be recognized. Chris Nolan, again, genre bends, does incredible things. His movies just, they rule.
Well, we'll do a Chris Nolan episode.
We should. But I do think that it's a great example of mafia movies. Yeah. I'm going to throw out, though, there's an underrepresented subgenre in here that we haven't talked much about, which is comedy movies. Oh. And there are a handful of them out there,
right?
The Freshmen. Analyze this. Analyze that. Prizzy's Honor, which got the creepy old guy from Christmas Vacation.
Yeah.
But I think the one we got to mention it, and that is Jay Moore's Mafia with an exclamation point at the end.
Not what I thought you were going to
What did you think I was going to say?
I thought you were going to go for what's the Michael Keaton one?
Oh, Johnny Dangerously. Yeah, I haven't watched that in years.
Yeah.
But I did watch Mafia last night in preparation for this episode. I was like, honey, let's rate it. It's like $3 on Vimeo.
Man.
And it still holds up. And by that, I mean, it's still pretty funny, right? But it's not like, those movies get chuckles out of you because they're funny, right? There's lots of sight gags, stupid stuff. Jay Moore, Lloyd Bridges, hilarious the Hot Shots movies. Lloyd Bridges plays the Don Corleone character who keeps mispronouncing his name. Right in the Godfather movies, there's people would slight the Corleones by mispronouncing Corleone. In this movie, Don Corleone mispronounces his name multiple times. It also sends up Casino. They have a part in the movie where they're showing the money counting, and Jay Moore doing the voiceover says, people have just started mailing in their money to save them the trouble of having to travel to Las Vegas. It's a funny, stupid movie in a genre that, it was really ripe for a send-up and a parody of this sort, and the Abramsons did it, and just like they did Hot Shots and Loaded Weapon, and they did just about as well as they did on those, which is, it's a funny movie. Yeah. It's not world-changing, but it's still funny 30 years later because it's all sight gags. It's all the airplane type stuff.
I have not seen that since it was in theaters.
Yeah, I think you and I saw it together.
Probably.
And I certainly know we watched it on video together. Because we were never satisfied watching a movie until we watched it 100 times.
That's true, yeah.
But anyway, I thought I would mention that. It's a nice honorable mention.
Well, I think we've had a stunningly good conversation about mob movies, and I think we've only scratched the surface.
I think so. I think we're trying to figure it out. We're trying to figure out a couple things here. Why do we like these movies?
Yes,
and I think that the answer is, well, first of all, they're entertaining. They're great pieces of cinema. Some of the best filmmakers have contributions to this genre. The second thing is those romantically, these characters have an attraction. They're either attractive, like Vito Corleone, like Michael in his own way, like the Corleone family, the bond that they have with each other, and you're like, oh, you can respect that. Or they're repulsive, but it's a train wreck that you don't want to look away from, like all the folks in the Scorsese world. And I think that those things we're trying to see. What are you trying to figure out today? It's like, why the heck do we like those movies? And I think that they're just simply enjoyable. And, everyone likes to see a good movie where someone gets kicked to death.
Sure.
And then buried in a potato field. Like, who doesn't? And Scorsese delivers that.
I mean, and the number of times I've opened mail to see a dead fish carcass, I mean, all the time.
Who's sleeping with the fishes now? Yeah, and if it's what if the fish is still alive? It's like, oh, well, he's just napping with the fishes. Hey, he's going to come back. Don't worry.
Yeah, it's a completely different message that's being sent.
Completely different message.
Ship it in a bowl.
Yeah, and every time I get a shipment from Buffalo Steaks, I'm like, who's grazing with the cows? Like, no, you ordered that. You paid money. No one is dead. Oh, I thought that was a message I was being sent by Mr. Buffalo Steak.
A known.
And I don't eat red meat, so it never. Like, I got to throw away all this steak.
Oh my gosh! All right. Well, I think we've got a little bit closer to figuring something out today.
I don't know. I think so.
I hope so. Well, we would love for you guys to get a little bit closer to figuring something out too. And something that occurred to me, Dave, as we were touting our new fancy website in the few episodes past, why didn't we just read them the email address as well? Why did we tell them to go to the website and then click About Us and then find the email address?
Because our website has the cool picture of the stick figures, and I thought we agreed on. We wanted everyone.
Oh, well, that's a good reason. But I'm going to say now we can just say what the email address is.
It is www. Oh wait, no, you don't do that.
It's not.
Go to AOL, click on it twice, really fast. We are us, US, as in the United States. Now, us at two middle-aged guys. The numeral 2, the number 2, middle-aged guys.com. That'll get you to Chris and Dave's inbox.
That's right.
You email us, we will read it on the air.
We will. We would love to have some
critique
mail.
Your grammar and spelling and overall sentence construction.
We will, but we might just assume that that's what Microsoft did and that you actually knew what was the right thing to type.
Or the new Google AI email
Bard
laboratory.
Yes.
Google is Bard part of the Google Laboratories
Bard
program?
is the Google AI.
Yeah, I got signed up for that. I haven't used it, but
I tried to create some pixel art with one of the art AIs, and I was horribly disappointed.
Well, our show logo is 100% AI generated. We did not edit it in any way. You put the words.
You handled that, and
I did.
I was
fun.
amazed at how good it turned out.
I was too. It only took like 4 or 5 tries where I was like, mixing up my prompts. Anyway, we're way off.
We are.
Yeah.
But so contact
So here's
us.
the offer. Email us and we will build you a logo.
That's right. No, that's not the offer.
Sorry.
No.
We want to hear from you. We want to hear what topics do you want us to discuss.
Yes.
Just say, hey, let us know how you found the show. We're very curious.
Absolutely.
And all that money, Chris, you gave me to put up billboards. Let's see if that's paid off. I have not put the billboards up yet.
Okay, then it's probably not going to pay off just yet.
Need to talk. I've spent some money. I don't know if you noticed the new OLED TV when you walked in. It's for the show.
I assumed it was.
You can't. I don't want you coming over to watch it.
No.
But I'll tell you about it. I'll describe it.
That's fine.
Yeah.
So yes, us at twomiddleagedguys.com, or you can go to www.twomiddleagedguys.com, the numeral 2.
Numeral 2. Don't forget that.
Twomiddleagedguys.com.
I can't vouch for that other website you're going to get to.
No.
And also hit us up on social, Twitter, Facebook. We don't have a whole lot there, but tweet us. Subscribe to our tweets, and we're figuring out what we're going to do. We have gone social.
Yes.
And everybody says that when they get a social media page. It's not clever.
No. And I don't even know how it works, so Dave's in charge of that. So
I am. And
if he says something you don't like, then it's his fault.
It's his by fault.
All right, everyone. Hope you enjoyed this episode, and we will be back in 2 short weeks with a brand new topic of something that we're trying to figure all out.
Have a good night.